Hey, I have no time to do anything in my life. What's up, a culture detective here, investigating your favorite albums, and today I'm going to be doing my fifth album in my classic album review series, and I'm gonna try to do it as fast as possible because I need to leave to go to school. But of course today I'm going to be talking about Elliot Smith's Either or. So Nebraska singer-songwriter Elliot Smith, another tragic figure in the folk side of the music industry. A little bit earlier, a couple weeks ago, I also reviewed Nick Drake's Pink Moon, and I'd like to think that Nick Drake and Elliot Smith are both in a similar vein, folk songwriters who have met an end in their career in the most sad and tragic way possible. And Elliot Smith's album here, Either or, is one of the many great albums he's made. And what's special about Elliot Smith's music is his vocals. His vocals are vulnerable, quiet, and he sings very, very close to the mic, so you really hear an intimacy when listening to his music. The lyrics are usually sad and bitter and kind of ambiguous, and apparently some of his songs turn up in the Good Will Hunting soundtrack, which had garnered him an Oscar nomination, which is really cool. But even so, that doesn't stop him from feeling like an obscure underground folk artist, despite the fact that after Either or, we have albums like XO and Figure 8, which have thicker and greater and grander instrumental palettes, but nonetheless, he still comes off shy, sad, and timid. Most tracks on this album feature nothing but guitars and vocals, maybe some drums. Okay. Okay. But still, he manages to switch up from song to song, and it's the simplicity and the minimalism sometimes that really makes these tracks. And of course, before Elliot Smith's Either or, we also have the self-titled album, Elliot Smith, which is also really beautiful. What he does, um, I have no idea what's going on outside. What he does constantly is to layer his vocals, and usually it creates this layered sound that just sounds really spacey and airy almost. So Elliott Smith has that going for him for this album. I swear, every time I film. The album opens up with Speed Trials, and it is an easygoing guitar song with spacey percussion, and despite sounding very uplifting, the vocals remain the quietest and weakest part of the track, and the chorus is so freeing, it's so out there, and it's so liberating. That's the word I'm going for. It's almost a little sad, and the lyrics are kind of ambiguous, and a lot of people have come up with different interpretations of the lyrics here. But personally, I would just like to see the song as is. And we have the second track, Alameda, which is a dejected tune with sour chords, beautiful vocal layers. Alameda actually refers to a street in Portland, Oregon, a place that Elliott Smith grew up at. And what's special is that lyrically he sings in the second person POV, so he's almost singing in the perspective of someone who's talking to himself. And he does that constantly on this album, which is very interesting and unique for a songwriter to do something like that. And one of the lines that really stick with me is how he keeps thinking about his friends and how he maintains his friends in a constant state of suspense. That sounds relatable. But following that, we have Ballad of Big Nothing with its big drums, clashing cymbals, blown out acoustic guitars, and tongue in cheek vocal performances and lyrics about being a drug addicted loser. Then we have Between the Bars, which is easily the most iconic song on the entire album, and rightfully so. This is a fantastic song. The chords are intimate, but depressing as hell. And then we have lyrics where the alcohol sort of talks back to him, drink up baby. And you can tell when listening to the song that the lyrics are written from a very tortured place and a very personal place as well, which is just beautiful. Following that, Pictures of Me, it's amazing. One of the things about big iconic tracks is that the track that follows that up usually underwhelm and disappoint because they're just not that good. But that doesn't seem to be an issue for Elliot Smith because the next track, Pictures of Me, is also an amazing track. It has a groovy 4/4 beat, but the track is so toned down, it sounds like kind of forced happiness. And then in the second half of the track, Elliot Smith's vocal starts going loud, and it actually goes pretty hard. Then No Name Number 5 presents a downtrodden slow burn about self-isolation and heartbreak. Then Rose Parade is a sweet nostalgic track about a parade and walking in the opposite direction of the parade and just leaving the crowd, and it's a very visual image. But this track just reeks of 90s folk. There's something so 90s about it. I mean, probably because this album's released in the 90s, but also there's just something so unique about its sound, and the lovely chords are fantastic. Punch and Judy, I feel like the album could have just ended after this track, and it would have been an amazing album ending for its nostalgic, bittersweet chord progression and the descending guitar tones, but once in a while the guitars come up and fight for a sweeter major chord. Then we have Angeles, which I think is a magical moment on the album. This is one of the tracks that I found out about this album earlier, like after speech trials and between the bars. And it's funny actually, because I started listening to this album like 2-3 years ago, but I sort of forgot about it and put it away until recently when I decided to do this classic review thing. But Angelus is definitely one of the tracks that immediately got my attention as of this new revisit of this album. And it's the airy tone that leads into this apocalyptic ballad about the city of Los Angeles, which is right outside my window. And there's something so sad and real about this track, and I listen to the lyrics and I just can't help but empathize with these lyrics. Picking up the ticket shows there's money to be made. Go on, lose the gamble, that's the history of the trade. Did you add up all the cards left to play to 0 and sign up with the evil Angelus? Which, again, Los Angeles is this big commercial city, and it's so full of excitement, and it has no room for sulking, and it's kind of a mind-crushing place in a way, and I think this track just captures it really well. Cupid's Trick displays a grander instrumental palette. At some point, this track almost turns into grunge rock with its grungy guitars and loud crashing drums, another very interesting musical direction. Then following the nastiest track on the album, we have the cleanest track with 2:45 a.m. And what happens on this track is that we get a singular vocal track and some simple guitars. Finally, the album ends off with Say Yes, which is interesting because it's written in the perspective of a girl, probably the person whom Elliot Smith had a relationship with, in the middle of recording and writing music for this album. But it's written in the perspective of a girl who decides to stay up and falls in love with the world. And it's a very positive and uplifting ending to the album. But is it really so? Is it really that positive? Because nonetheless, through reading the lyrics and through thinking about the context of what this song is about, there's definitely a somber side to it. And I think that's what's so great about this album, is that most of the tracks here sound happy, but they're all devastatingly depressing. And that's sort of the magic of this album. And I love how quiet and vulnerable and lonely this album is. And honestly, it's right up my alley. So I'm honestly feeling a strong 9 to a 10 out of 10. I mean, somewhere between a strong 9 and a 10. Who knows? So, have you listened to the new Elliot Smith album? Not new. This Elliot Smith album. Comments below. Let me know, subscribe if you want more, and thanks for watching. 2 more albums. Yes, 2 more, and then we're done with Classics Week.